The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL. You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast.
We've got so much to cover today. I want to spend some time reflecting on my week with the Buffalo Bills. I spent last week in Rochester and Orchard Park watching Bills practices. I took in 5 practices, so I want to share my prevailing thought about what's happening at each position. Obviously, we got to talk about James Cook in business, and Sean McDermott also gave us quite the injury update on Sunday morning. So a lot to do here on this episode. Let me first say that while I am no longer in Buffalo, Rochester area, I am in the North Carolina mountains, spending a few days here with my family. So the background looks a little bit different, but we'll be home middle of the week and back to our normal studio and setup for, I guess, the season. So having some fun with the family here before everything kicks into high gear. All right, Sean McDermott gave us a big injury update. I want to start with Khalil Shakir, who left the return of the blue and red on Friday night with an injury, and now we know that he is week to week with a high ankle sprain. Saw some reports out there that it could be a 4 to 5 week type deal. Khalil had a high ankle sprain last year. He missed one game. He tried to play through that Baltimore game, but he wasn't right. And now we got to see where this goes. Obviously, he's going to miss quite a bit of time here. Obviously, we know who Khalil Shakir is and what he can offer, and I think it's very important for him to get this ankle right. We don't want this to be something that's going to linger all season long. As a player that I think most expect to be the highest targeted guy in this offense. And so wanting to get this thing right, but obviously another injury, and this one, he's not coming back this week. It's going to be a couple weeks here at least before Khalil Shakir is back on the field. Other players that didn't practice on Sunday. Offensive lineman Cedric Van Pran Granger, who has yet to practice at all during training camp. Cornerback Maxwell Hairston with the sprained LCL. He's going to miss several weeks. Offensive lineman Alec Anderson with the knee scope. We already mentioned Shakir. Safety Cole Bishop with the quad injury. Wide receiver Curtis Samuel. Linebacker Dorian Williams. Wide receiver Caden Prather. Linebacker Shaq Thompson. That's the other player that left on Friday night. He has a hamstring injury. Taylor Rapp has a knee injury. He didn't practice on Sunday. And then Tyler Bass still working through that pelvic soreness. So long list of guys not practicing. And we had some players that were limited in Sunday's practice. Wide receiver Josh Palmer with the groin injury. Fullback Reggie Gilliam with a groin injury. Linebacker Terrell Bernard and right tackle Spencer Brown. Now, Bernard and Spencer Brown, it's good that those guys are ramping up. They were limited in practice on Sunday. Spencer Brown activated over the weekend. So those appear to be trending in a good direction. So all those players didn't practice, and Sean McDermott let everyone know about it during his press conference before practice. And then practice happens, and James Cook is not in uniform. He's in street clothes. And McDermott didn't say anything about it. And Elena Getzenberg reported after practice, she went up to James Cook and asked why he didn't practice today. And James Cook said, business. Elena followed up and asked if he's going to practice tomorrow. And he responded with the word business. Elena on X shared that Cook just kept repeating business over and over. Elena also reported that the Bills had no comment on Cook not participating in Sunday's practice. So I guess the drama has officially begun. He missed a mandatory practice. And it's a signal to me that this is now a hold-in situation. He showed up on time, practiced in full, and then I guess he had some thoughts over the weekend and decided it's time to hold in and force the issue a little bit. I found it interesting that Tom Pelissero reported on Sunday that the Bills and James Cook have been in constant contact and are not that far apart. That actually aligns with some rumblings that I heard earlier in the week, and I kind of put a little Easter egg out there in the podcast, and I put a little Easter egg out there in our Discord channel, that it felt like things were trending in a good direction, which aligns with Tom Pelissero's report. But obviously, James Cook has found it now necessary to not practice and just say business as to the reason why he's not practicing. So it makes me very curious. What's the resolution here? Will James Cook practice and play short of a new deal? Is this going to turn into a Terry McLaurin, Micah Parsons situation where those guys have recently requested trades? Where does this go? But you know who's happy about this? HBO. Hard Knocks comes out Tuesday night. What a way to end the episode. What a cliffhanger, right? You introduce the Bills. You tell this story about Josh Allen and Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane and Deion Dawkins, and you introduce some of the guys you want to highlight throughout the coming weeks. James Cook's there to start. And then right here, right up against when they're going to publish this thing, the hold in. That's a weird thing to say. Hold in begins. Again, very curious to see what the resolution is here. The Bills have a lot of leverage in this situation. But I want Cook to be out there. He's going to be the guy that touches the football the most of any offensive skill player not named Josh Allen. I want him to be ready to go for the Baltimore Ravens in week 1. And obviously this is just not helpful. Now, I have a level of confidence in James Cook and the caliber of player that he is, that he can miss a little time, but now this is officially something that we have to monitor, and we no longer have the warm fuzzies that the year's going to play out, and we'll see what happens. It seems like James Cook is forcing the issue, and I don't know if that's going to work. I really don't. Brandon Beane has never been held over the fire and caved, right? We've not seen that happen yet. So we'll see. We shall see. We'll keep you posted here. Obviously, this all coming together on Sunday afternoon.
Ever wished managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Micah Parsons has officially requested a trade.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast.
This is clearly an escalation. This is clearly, step up from the conversations that they have been and the talk that they've been having. I'm still not moved by this. Like, I'm still not, I still don't feel like this changes the angles too much. I think it changes the angles for the negotiation, and that's the point, right? It's a way for Micah to create more leverage to try to get this deal done the way they want, but look, everything that we've heard from folks that know make this sound like this is literally a problem of these two sides needing to, who's going to blink first, and then they're going to have the conversation. It sounds like they may even have the numbers down. It sounds like this whole thing may be about a length of contract in some ways. But regardless, at this point, they clearly are arguing pretty loudly and publicly. Micah has taken a step, kind of up in his war of wars, words warfare. He's learned from the best. He learned from Jerry, so like, I think at this point it's still a lot of bluster. The facts of the matter is the Cowboys definitely own Micah Parsons' contract for this year and have, at least 2 tags that they can place on him for the next 2 years. So if the Cowboys don't want to get rid of Micah Parsons, he's not going anywhere for 3 years. And that's why this whole thing is kind of, it's kind of silly, right? Like, because ultimately this isn't over. Like, this isn't even close to being over. And it's about winning this negotiation. But I would, and everyone who's afraid, and I totally get it. Like, he's our best player. I don't want to lose him either, because I think he's a great player, and I like Micah Parsons a lot as well. I would point to the Myles Garrett situation, as many people are kind of pointing out here, which happened literally like 2 months ago, where Myles literally wanted a trade and asked for a trade very publicly, and then the deal very kind of subtly got done, and it all went away. So I think that's where I'm at. It's a big loud noise, but it's still just noise.
All right, I want to break this down from both sides, because I do think both sides are in the wrong a little bit here, and I'm going to get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But this is just so freaking exhausting and annoying. Like, it's just, Micah Parsons is arguably your best player. I think he's your best player. I think you would agree.
Yep, absolutely.
It didn't need to get to this point. And I remember saying a couple months ago, like, talk to me on August 1st. That was the date. Like, hey, if Micah's not practicing on August 1st, we'll have a conversation. Well, by golly, it's August 1st, and they've pulled the nuclear button, or pushed the nuclear button to get this all moving. I know there's other teams that are dealing with this kind of stuff. Like, Washington is dealing with the Terry McLaurin stuff. Now, it's a little different. He's 30, right? And he's wanting to be paid like a top end receiver. Myles Garrett was dealing with this stuff with the Browns, but it's just, I just want them to have a training camp in an off season that's about football and about not all this other nonsense. And this is a second off season in a row that we're doing this, where it's Micah and CD. CD sat out all of training camp last year, and Dak had the negotiations, and it gets really tiring. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just one of these situations where it's like you're setting the high end of the market on a deal. And when they get that, like the Joneses, just they get competitive, and they don't want to blink on these situations. Again, it's really just frustrating, because like for you and I, like, we want to talk about football. Football is actually happening now. Like, pads are on, these training camp practices, and that's why Marcus brought up the earlier show when we were talking about football. Mm-hmm. But like the truth of the matter is that we try to focus on football. They try to use the media to try to get folks on their side so that they can kind of have their negotiation wars. And a lot of really negative. I mean, think about some of these negotiations, and not just with the Cowboys, but with a lot of these teams. When there's high-end negotiations like this, a lot of crazy stuff gets said. Trades get demanded. People saying, "I'll never play for this team ever again." Blah 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 blah. Think about all the stuff that, I mean, again, I hate to keep pointing to the Myles Garrett stuff, but think about all the stuff that Myles said that he wanted from like the Browns organization that never followed up for afterwards. So I think this is probably an acceleration. They're going to probably, it sounds like the Cowboys have already come out and said that they're not going to respond to this trade request. So we'll see how that moves. But, at some point, something's going to move. Somebody's going to pick up the phone. It's always this narrative of like, Jerry it was late one night, and Jerry picked up the phone. He's like, "Hey, what are we doing here, guys? Like, why don't we negotiate this contract?" And then it gets done. And, so I think both sides are trying to get the better end of this deal for sure. And they're playing a lot of hardball, and it looks ugly when it's being played out in the media. And we're seeing it kind of laid out bare for us all to watch. But I think at the end of I think I said, I keep saying, there's just nothing about this that makes me feel like Micah isn't playing for the Cowboys next year and beyond.
I mean, I still feel that way. We're going to get into whether or not we think he gets traded, but I do want to point out something. It feels very much like you have a changing of the guard a little bit, in the sense of like, we really haven't seen like an active player kind of go at Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones like this in the media. You heard CeeDee Lamb at a press conference a couple of days ago talking about how, like, hey, all these, it's just basically nonsense. Like, hey, we don't need to have all these critiques from the front office. And remember, Dak last year talked about how he doesn't really listen to what Jerry says. it's really hard to build a culture. And maybe this is one of the bigger problems with the Cowboys, when there constantly feels like there's fighting going on between the front office and the players. And I get it that it's part of the business, but it doesn't feel this way with every team across the NFL. And this is where you and I have critiqued Jerry. It's like Jerry Jones used to do this kind of stuff so he could be part of the news cycle 365 days of the year. I think we're past that. Like, football has become so popular that you don't need to do that. And I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze anymore, trying to, bleed every little news story out of a contract like this. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's having as much of a detrimental effect as we would think it does. I think these guys view it as a business, but I agree. Like, there's no point to it. There's no reason to continue to do it. It isn't creating a positive media narrative. And like, again, like like I said, when we talked about this before, I understand the thought of the idea that all press is good press. I just have a hard time seeing that. Like, it's just not being spun in a positive way for the Cowboys at this point. Even though, like, I think that Micah and his agent have more to do with this deal than is being portrayed in the media, right? It feels like it's all on Jerry and Steven, which I certainly think they deserve more share of the blame, but it's not like they're the only people in this negotiation. No. So yeah, I think at this point, I wonder if they don't kind of reevaluate how they handled all of this after this, because maybe Mike has kind of found a way to negate the positive benefits of dragging deals out in the media, like to the point where they decide.
Well, it feels like his credibility is higher than anybody else on the Cowboys, right? Because he's young, he's dynamic, he's an all-pro caliber player, and if it's Micah doing this, it carries some weight. We are discussing the Micah Parsons trade request, which happened on Friday afternoon, and let's go with this. Do you think there's any chance the Cowboys actually trade Micah? Like, what would have to happen for us to get to that point?
I mean, it would have to be an enormous trade. Like, I've seen the kind of hinting of what's going, down, or the kind of framework of what potentially would be a trade so far. And it's, you starting at the Khalil Mack deal with, maybe some adjustments to make it 3 first-round picks or something like that. I mean, the Cowboys would have to be blown away, I would imagine. And I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen, because I also think that, like, most teams realize that that's the thing about some of these trade requests, is that sometimes like the teams won't even come after this situation because they know that it's not going to happen. Right. Like, yeah. Whether it was collusion or not, that's kind of what happened with something, with some of these situations with Lamar Jackson when he became a free agent. It's like some of these teams just won't move on this stuff because they know it's just not realistic. So I think you start with, like, a package that would include 3 first-round picks and then negotiate from there. But I just, like I said, I can't imagine a situation where they got a deal that would blow them away enough that they would actually execute it.
Now, one of the things I'll be curious to see, and I think I know the answer, is if they allow Micah Parsons to go out and try to find trade offers and his agent, right? Because I think what that can do is you could see what other teams would offer Micah on a deal, and maybe that helps speed up negotiations a little bit. Like, hey, Washington's willing to pay Micah $44 million a year. There you go. Why don't you guys just, if you match that, we're done here, right? I don't even think we're going to get to that point. I don't think the Cowboys are going to allow Micah to get trades. Now, obviously, his agent, David Mulligetta, he talks to every team. He's going to know what a team would offer. I just think we are months away from that. And actually, here's another thing. Ed Warder's reporting that Micah Parsons is planning on showing up to practice because he doesn't want to lose the $50,000 that the Cowboys can fine him, which to me shows that he's not going to want to miss regular season games, right? If you don't want to miss 50,000, if you don't want to give up 50,000 in fines during training camp, you're not going to do it in the regular season. I think the only way a trade could potentially happen is if we're talking about 2026 and the Cowboys putting the franchise tag on him then, but I don't see it happening this year.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time seeing it happening, period, but I certainly don't see it happening this season. Yeah, I think, if it kind of bleeds into that, I also just don't, I just don't imagine it going on that long. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just, these sides are both being hard headed, but that's a really long time for that to kind of bleed into. Look, I think where I'm going to be before I start believing there's any kind of actual change here is if we get to the week before the regular season and he still isn't signed, then my tone shift will probably change on what the long-term situation is with Micah Parsons. I don't know that there's anything that makes me think that Micah Parsons isn't going to be playing for the Cowboys in 2025.
Yeah, now there were a couple of reports out today that the Cowboys tossed around some trade ideas in previous seasons, but nothing recently, right? Like, I think they were saying, hey, if we can get a monster haul from him coming off the 2023 season and save our money. But again, you're going into the 5th-year option. You've already decided what you wanted to do. And honestly, here's the thing that bothers me the most. And this is actually, I'm stealing this from Joe Goodberry, who said this a couple years ago. When you draft a player in round 1 and that player becomes everything you could ever imagine and more, and then you don't pay that player right away, it sets a bad precedent for your organization. And it shows that you're not really a serious organization. Now we can debate that last part, right? But there is part of it like, hey, if you draft a guy in round 1, he becomes everything you could have ever imagined. Don't wait to try to get this deal done. Try to get it done as soon as possible. And that's, I think, if you read Micah's response, I think that's where he was the most agitated, is that he wanted to get a deal done after year 3. He was okay waiting until after year 4. And the fact that we are days away from year 5 starting and he doesn't have a deal, I think that really bothered him.
Yeah, absolutely. I will point out that I love Joe Goodberry, but the team that he writes for are the Cincinnati Bengals, who are really struggling.
I know it's not different. I get it.
And so like, but I think the point is that, like, the Cowboys had their own timeline for this. I don't agree with their timeline. Let me be very, very clear. Like, their own timeline is terrible. They may have their own reasons for it. They may have some sort of, mathematical reason that if they wait X amount of time and I doubt it, but that may be their argument. Regardless of that, Micah felt that he wanted to have the deal done early, and the Jones felt like they wanted the deal done late. Both of those sides are kind of working against their own financial arguments by suggesting that. So at this point, it's like these guys just need to talk. And if, like, maybe you're right, if letting Micah go out and see what the offers are for trades, if that like kind of greases the wheels enough to kind of go through here for things to start working, then maybe that's what it takes. I will also point out, in that same article that you referenced, in which 2 years ago or whatever, that the Cowboys were potentially kicking around the idea of the trading Micah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was only one voice that said absolutely not. We are not going to do this. And that was Jerry Jones, right? And I think that the thing that we cannot forget here is that Jerry and Micah like really, really like each other. Like really, really, really do. And so, I don't think that that's changed. I think that they're, at the end of the day,
it's interesting that Mike has kind of signaled out Stephen Jones. He said he sent the request to Stephen Jones. I just thought that was interesting, but it's because if you focus the ire on Stephen, it allows Jerry to be the kind of backdoor way of like negotiating that is like, it allows Jerry to come to you and your agent at this point and be the olive branch bringer, right? And so, okay, finally it's the exact same thing that we talked about last segment, right? Where Jerry's going to pick up the phone at 11 o'clock at night and be like, hey, what do we got to do to get this deal done? If you focus your ire on Steven like that, it allows Jerry to be clean enough to come in and play hero, which I think
what they're doing is they're playing to Jerry's ego there, like hoping that he comes through with the, overhand. Oh, okay, let's get this done deal that they're looking for.
Again, I just want to be clear. I don't think the Cowboys are going to trade Micah Parsons. I think this is just a lever that agents play to try to turn fans against the front office, right? To put pressure on the front office so that a deal will get done. We've seen this happen across the NFL between Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson. Just this week, Terry McLaurin was another one, right? So I don't think it's going to happen. I will say, if a trade happens, that would be a colossal failure by this front office. If we get to the point where he does get moved, I don't even care what the package is. I don't care whether it's 2 first rounds or first round picks or 3 first round picks. We're talking about a disaster. And I don't think we get there, but I wanted to be on record with that.
We've all been there. Logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. And you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. With Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price, guaranteed.
Zach Sieler is getting the bag.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast.
I have to think Zach Sieler is now able to buy a whole lot of tickets to a Dolphins home game thanks to this 3-year contract extension that he and the Dolphins agreed to last night. And this hit, I was out, kids getting some ice cream, and it's kind of the backwoodsy area. I get back to the house and the phone, bing, 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 bing. Look down, this 15 minutes ago, Dolphins agreed to terms on a 3-year contract extension with Zach Sieler. The official terms of this deal, as it has been reported, are interesting because it's giving you peeking through keyholes at some of the details, but there's that reporting language that always makes it a little bit more complicated to get a feel for exactly what the terms of the deal are. But here's what we know at this point in time. Zach Sieler had a 2-year contract remaining off of his 3-year extension that he signed ahead of 2023. And it was $15.95 million was what he was scheduled to receive from 25 and 26 combined. The new extension is 3 years on top of that for up to, keyword here, Adam Schefter, I see you. I know what you're doing. Up to $67.75 million. It includes $44 million guaranteed. Not necessarily guaranteed at signing. And Drew Rosenhaus had a spot with Josh Moser and talked a little bit more about some of the details here we're going to get into. But 3 years, $67.75 million max value, $44 million guaranteed. Is now the Dolphins' highest paid defensive player. Drew Rosenhaus on his spot with Josh Moser, put in the highest paid Dolphins player in franchise history, I believe. Or highest paid Dolphins defensive tackle in franchise history. Yeah. So we're playing the game, right? And we want to get our wins. And I've said about Drew Rosenhaus and Rosenhaus Sports as an agency, I like playing in the sandbox with them because there's a lot of mutual ground that's able to be found, right, for players. And I look at this deal, and you look at some of the averages. 22.58 per year in new money is the max value of this contract. That would rank Zach Sieler 10th amongst all defensive tackles. That in and of itself, for a player who has double-digit sacks in each of the last 2 seasons and has been a war daddy as far as the sacks that he's taken and is a leader in the locker room and A, B, C, X, Y, and Z, anything that you can point to. A deal that currently slots 10th. And that's with the reported up to terms. What are the not up to terms? Because there's a couple of guys that are sitting at 22.5 in Deron Payne and Dexter Lawrence. Plus you have Leonard Williams at 21.5. All of those guys could potentially leap over Sieler from a total value perspective of the new years of the new money on the new years of the contract, depending on how hard and likely to be attained are whatever incentives and how much of it is incentives for this reported max value of $67.675 million. And that's the game that's always played when you first start reporting deals, right? But Zach's now under contract through 2029 because it was 2 years remaining plus 3 new years on top of it. It's 5 years of player control, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. I'm not a math guy, but I can do that. Spoiler alert. I did a lot of math overnight on this based off what we currently know. And the total value across the 67.75 in new money across 3 new years, plus the pre-existing, effectively round up, call it 16 million. I'm also not a math guy, but I can do that math. It's about 83.7 to be exact, $1 million is the 5-year commitment for the Dolphins. So if you take that average, and you would have to do that for every defensive tackle contract to get a true snapshot of where it ranks versus all players. But the things that were working against Zach in this, and I thought Zach had a good answer for this at training camp when he was asked about it. He referred to himself as a little bit more of a low miles player than what his age might indicate because he was a late bloomer and his first year in Baltimore, he didn't play. And then he was on and off and on and off and on and off and on and off the roster before the Dolphins cleaned him off the waiver wire. And then he sticks in Miami, right? His first 2 years, like he really played sparing amounts of football. So a little bit lower average mileage than your typical 30-year-old defensive lineman. And he turns 30 in about a month on September 7th. Happy early birthday to Zach. Here's a big contract extension. That's one. And then the fact that he had 2 years of player control left. And I know that was the big question for do you do a deal, do you not do a deal, and how you did deals in past years. And well, he has multiple years left on his contract. But the argument from my frame of mind has always been, and I've said this on this program, I've said this in writing, I said this on A to Z Sports, I said this on the Joe Rowe Show. If you wouldn't do it for Zach Sieler, who in God's name would you do it for? Right? Like, and I walked away from the press conference he had when I was there at training camp and felt even more convicted in that for how he handled it with grace and he handled it with humility and he handled it with confidence and non-judgment for how other guys have handled it. And he is a leader on this team, and he is rewarded for what has been 2 years of outperforming his prior contract. But he didn't fuss and make a stink and went about it the right way. And I think for the Dolphins organizationally, when you think about what they've aspired to be, any kind of business model can work with the right people. Zach Sieler is one of those people that serves as the right people for what the Dolphins business model has been.